Hi, welcome to Everbox Guitar Tuition. So I've got another classic album inspection for you today. So when I do these things, I think they split into kind of four things. We've only used three of them so far properly. There's albums that are classics of their genre, like I did Killers by Iron Maiden. It's a classic of the new wave of British heavy metal. It is a classic metal album. Then there's albums that I think are kind of classic, but other people wouldn't, like Edge of Insanity by Tony McAlpine. And then there's albums that are from a classic period of metal, but maybe just kind of interest, like Turbo Badger's Priest or the Symbolic Ozzy Osbourne. Kind of flawed albums, but they're of interest. So, they're from a classic era. I think this album I'm going to do now is a true classic. It's an album that outstrips and goes outside its genre to be an all-time classic. So, you got Sgt. Pepper's, you got Dark Side of the Moon, Rumours, Off the Wall, Michael Jackson, Bat of Hell, albums like that just people know as classic records. So on August the 25th, 45 years ago, the debut album by Boston was released. Now, in terms of like pattern about this, it's really quite a convoluted story, this album. So what I suggest you do is head over to Wikipedia or articles. But to cut a long story short, Tom Scholz was playing in bar bands in the Boston area. He'd graduated from MIT, and in that time he was able to network with musicians in the Boston area, but he was writing songs and he was obsessed with crafting the perfect song that combined the sort of hard rock he liked at the time, like Blue Cheer. There's a band called The Left Bank he references for vocal harmonies, and I guess some more of the kind of pop stuff that he'd grown up with for vocal harmonies, like the Byrds, I guess the Beatles, stuff like that. And he bought recording equipment, and he was renting a house for his wife, and he put the recording equipment in his basement. I think he had another studio with a mate, and maybe he's moved his recording gear over there. So he came, him and Brad Delp had played together. They tried sending some demos around and they all got rejection letters, basically. But these demos were most of the tracks off his debut album. So what Scholz did was continued working on them, trying to perfect them. What we end up hearing has probably gone through several kind of evolved process. And I think what's interesting about this is Scholz's background's engineering. So in engineering, you have to do research and development. So you play like a long game. Like, for instance, it's a slightly different thing, but like Brian May's guitar that he made, I was always like, how the hell did he make a really good guitar straight off? But he didn't. He kind of started making it and failed a few times as they were going through it and refined things. And when you read the book, he's kind of engineered it really from home. If you think about James Dyson, he took something like 5,500 prototypes until, or refinements, starting from trying to solve his problem to getting there. And I think Tom Scholz has taken this approach with the Boston album, not only with getting the demos perfected, but like perfecting these songs. The other thing as well, I think in that respect, and this won't be a popular opinion, he actually has something in common with the kind of what I call the Swedish Hit Factory. The principal person involved in that's Max Martin, who's one of the most successful songwriters of all time. And if you read up on your Max Martin, he basically, for want of a better expression, sciences the fuck out of his songs. And I think that's what Tom Scholz has done to a certain extent. So he's taken his background in engineering, in problem solving, in that thought process, research and development, etc., and then he's put that into the process of trying to create like the perfect sounding record, the perfect sounding album. Okay, so eventually the demos, it's a convoluted story, but Epic signed the band. I think he'd got Brad Delp to come back in and do the vocals, and that's how Boston finally got his deal. And then he wanted to record from his home basement, so they came up with some convoluted plan where the record company thought they were recording in New York, I think, but he was actually recording in his basement. But he did struggle. They did go to other studios, I think, and he did struggle with some aspects, and they did fly in an engineer to help him capture vocals, I think, a bit more, but acoustic instruments, he wasn't sure on his mic placement. But the guy who was the kind of second engineer was blown away by his guitar sounds. I'm not sure what amps they used on the Boston album. I think they might have used a Pignose or some stuff, but I don't know. probably Marshalls. But the guitar sound in this album's it's kind of got a nasally mid bit. It's really cool. Okay, so that's, you know, kind of my just initial thoughts about the album. Let's just have a look at the tracks on this. Okay, so this is another thing. This is the biggest selling debut album of all time. When it came out, it was a long time before it was beaten. I think Whitney Houston beat it. But on its initial release, it sold 9 million copies. It was certified diamond status by 1990. It's now sold 70 million copies in the United States and over 20 million worldwide. More like 25, I think. So it's not only one of the biggest selling debut albums of all time, superseded only by a couple. It's just one of the biggest selling albums ever. Okay, so so the first track, there's not much to say about this more than the feeling. If you're interested in finding out more about this track, go on Rick Beato's What Makes This Song Great, and you'll see why this song is kind of great. We know it's a great song, but it's kind of great that you realise, because it's just like the vocals are double tracked really subtly. It's actually got clean guitar tracked in with a 12-string acoustic. But I think it shows like the strengths of the album sonically. I think the first thing is obviously it uses acoustic guitars virtually on every track on this album, I think. But the blend, sometimes they're brought out in the mix more and used kind of for verses and stuff. Other times they're kind of in the mix, but they're kind of percussive. But they're always present, and what they do is kind of soften the heaviness, but provide another timbre to the sound. And that's apparent on this. Then you've got the rhythm guitar sound, as I already mentioned. It's kind of got this nasally tone, but it works beautifully. And then it's got one to trademark the twin lead on this. So Tom Scholz and Barry Goudreau do the lead guitar, Sib Hassan on bass, on drums, Fran Shin on bass guitars. A guy called Jim Mazdir played drums on Rock and Roll Band. We'll come to that. But that's the kind of classic Boston lineup. But principally, Tom Scholz plays most of the bass on this. He plays electric guitar's lead guitar. He plays the organ and so on. But anyway, on this track, you've got the acoustic guitars, you've got the electric. You've got a stupendous vocal by Brad Delp. So Brad Delp, you kind of forget, like, when you think of great singers, you don't immediately spring to mind about Brad Delp. And I think the reason for that is because you've got the Boston album, and then it's Don't Look Back, and there's a big gap, and they never played much over in England, and I don't know how much touring they did, and you tend to think of other AOR singers where it's like just Steve Perry, Jimmy Jamison. You forget how utterly incredible Brad Delp is, and when you listen to his vocal take on this, like I said, you're on a Rick Beato thing as well. It's just, aside from his staggering range and control, he's hitting falsetto, he's hitting high notes that are stratospheric but beautiful. It's not unpleasant, I love, say, like Rob Halford, but if Rob Halford sung this, it wouldn't be as pleasant for the listener. And the whole point is with this is a breakout track. It's a classic of rock radio. It's a classic of, like, it's Father's Day and Dad's rock CDs, and I'll have this on. It's a track that is a total classic, and it kind of outlives the album. Loads of people know this song, and even if they didn't know it was by Boston, they know it. Okay, so the first track it's an absolute classic. It's written by Tom Scholz. He writes all the tracks apart from Brad Delp co-writes Smokin', and Brad Delp wrote the last track. So all the aspects that Scholz brought together are in this track, and that's why it's a great success. It utilises mixolydian mode for its intro, so it's happy but not quite as happy as when it goes to the chorus, which is in a major key, and that rhythm was copied by Kurt Cobain for Smells Like Teen Spirit, another hit. So that's that track. I mean, he makes use of one thing as well. I read it up. It's called Mordants. It's like it comes with classical influence, Tom Scholz, but we would probably know it as trills, and there's quite a lot of trills on the guitar solos on this album. So Scholz is a great player. He's a great rhythm player. I haven't quite sussed out when he's Barry Goudreau, but anyway, playing as well. So the second track's Peace of Mind. So again, that's another really well-known track on the album. Again, it's got the same hallmarks: ripping guitars, acoustics, amazing vocal harmonies as that bit. Take a look ahead. And how long's that track? 5 minutes. So more than the thing is 4:46. So they're kind of a little longer, these tracks. They go on a journey. But again, it's another classic track. And then the third track's probably my favourite, and it's Foreplay Long Time. So Foreplay, it's kind of 2 tracks but put together. So Foreplay's a great instrumental. He makes use of the Hammond organ on this in his classical style of playing, Tom Scholz. It's really epic, and the bit before it goes into Long Time, it's got big power chords, big sweeps. It's almost, when you see Boston's logo, the spaceship, you can almost imagine the spaceship taking off. And then he comes in. Another thing to mention about on the album, it makes amazing use of pick slides. So Tom Scholz, he's got his way of doing a pick slide. It sounds like a jet engine taking off, and held notes breaking into feedback as well. And that's a great. This track, Long Time's got some great. I'm doing Nigel Tufnell there. Sorry. So, the other thing about this track is the dynamics, you've got that really cool verse with just that Hammond going, and then that guitar comes in. So it's just really epic. It's just like immensely well crafted. I think the bit where it breaks down the acoustic and the vocal harmony is fantastic. Taking my time, it's just so catchy. The vocal harmonies are great. I was checking out actually, Brad Delp just seems to do all the harmony vocals, I think. Yeah, he's basically harmonised with himself, sorry. That's that track. That was side 1. I mean, this album's only 37 minutes, and I'm just checking here. 37:41. So that was side 1. There's only three and a half tracks, really. And that's pretty much, those are like your 3 absolute kind of classic tracks that you hear a lot. Side 2 opens with 2 more kind of rock radio faves. So you've got Rock and Roll Band. And it's quite interesting with this, again, like Peace of Mind, it just, it's kind of using those 12-bar boogie guitars. So again, you can sort of put it in the lines of Aerosmith's ZZ Top and rock going back into the late 60s. But what's interesting in the chorus, it kind of flips into a minor key, Rock and Roll Band. Again, it just spins the music in a different direction. The song becomes more than what it might normally be, I think. It's a really cool lyric just about, playing around the bars in Boston and trying to make it. I was actually reading on the thing, Tom Scholz didn't realise he was in the music business. He was still working at Polaroid in the first few weeks before this album came out. When it sold 200,000 copies, he said he realised, all right, I was in the music business. And then it just sold like wildfire. But Rock and Roll Band's a great track. And then Smoking's the next track. And again, this has got like a boogie. Again, you could sort of compare it to Tiny Mo Down by Queen, stuff ZZ Top were doing. Really cool track, just smoking about getting high. But again, it just flips the switch in the middle section. So it's his party rock tune, but then it breaks down, and he does his amazing Hammond organ solo, starts bringing in classical stuff. Then he kind of jams and starts having a bluesy sort of Hammond type thing going on. Then it breaks down again, and then he goes more classical. So it just, it's kind of got a boogie, dum-ba-dum-ba-dum. So you just wouldn't expect, you just expect someone to do a pentatonic solo. But the song, again, a party rock song, becomes this other thing. And this is great, another, like I said, classic of rock radio, you do hear it a lot. So in actual fact, I would say your first 3 tracks are probably the most well-known. Then Rock and Roll Band, Smoking, you would hear them on Planet Rock, you'd hear them on radio stations in America. So the last 3 tracks are the deep cuts. So when I was listening to it today, I was kind of, I've not heard Hitch a Ride for a while. I was pleasantly surprised when this track comes in. It's got just the right vibe, actually. It's just what the album needs. So you've had 2 party rock tunes, and you had the epicness of Foreplay Long Time. And this is just like a really, really nice sort of acoustic sort of vibe to the number. It's got a lovely lead guitar, again, a lovely 12 strings, just really well arranged track. Then track 7, again, another deep cut, Something About You. This starts kind of with a minor key vibe, which is, you haven't really heard as much of on the album. And then it expands into like this full-on rock song with great harmonies. I think Barry Goudreau and Tom Scholz, is a good trade-off there. I think you can hear the 2 guitars more than that. I'm sort of maybe misremembering, or certainly you can do it on the next track. So Let Me Take You Home Tonight is the last track. I mean, this is probably the weakest track, but it's still a good tune, but it kind of rocks out at the end, and that's really cool. So I mean, that's, you know, there's a lot more you could say about that. I'm just looking at technical personnel. John Boland production, Warren Dewey engineering. So like, yeah, there was assistant engineers as well. Interesting here, other personnel, Gary Phil photo editing. So that was Gary Phil later on became the second guitarist with Boston. Huge success. 70 million in the United States, million in Canada, sorry, gold, United Kingdom. I mean, like I said, it's just one of those albums. It's one of the all-time albums, you know. The final thing I think to say about the production that I noticed when I was listening to it is it's all kind of mixed in sympathy. Apparently when they were mixing it, Schultz was cranking the guitars too high, so that, you know, one of the other guys was able to kind of rein that in, and there's amazing balance on the album. No one instrument kind of is kind of favoured, and if you want to zone in on an instrument, you can. If you want to listen to Brad Delp, you can do. He's actually he's not on top of the mix. If you want to listen to the drums, you know, they're a little more pushed back, but they're there, and so's the bass. It's kind of like this whole, I mean, the drum sounds quite trashy, the snare, but once everything's going, it works really well. So I mean, at this time again, you've got a lot of like really well crafted albums like Hotel California. Next year you've got Rumours, and it's a real like high point in that era of albums that will sell millions of copies and get played on the radio. But these albums are still sonically so pure. That's why we'll keep going back to them. You know, the way stuff's recording now, I don't think you'll ever make records that have this feeling more than the feeling. There's just something about the alchemy of the process then that means that they've got this aura about them that I don't think you'll get back. The other thing I think, the final thing to say is Tom Scholz. You know, he had like basically 7 years probably of writing these songs and bringing them to fruition. Obviously, he got pressure on him for the next album, Don't Look Back, which isn't as good. I mean, it is a good sophomore album, but I never found myself drawn to it as much just because, you know, you've got everything you need in Boston, really. And then he took 8 years doing the third stage, probably to try and recreate the process that he went through to get to this. So a very difficult taskmaster. Obviously invented a Rockman, which was used heavily in the 80s. But, yeah, bit of genius, and Brad Delp, R.I.P. But, you know, listen to this album. You know, it's Brad Delp's record in a lot of ways, because, you know, if you don't have the quality of his vocals, the songs won't connect with the wider audience. The singer, not the song, as I say. But they're great songs. Tom Scholz, you know, composed these amazing tunes. So it came together with this incredible album. Like I said, there's more I could say about this, and I've probably tripped over myself in places, but I hope you enjoyed that. But head on the internet, you can research more, the complexities of how it came to fruition. Cheers. So, Boston, 45 years old today. Cheers.